Before you sleep tonight, your mind will probably replay at least one conversation that already ended hours ago. You will think about what you said, what you should have said, how the other person reacted, what they might secretly think about you now. And even after your body gets tired, your mind will keep going. One thought becoming five becoming 50. Now imagine living like that almost every single day, constantly analyzing, constantly predicting, constantly worrying about things that may never even happen. If that sounds familiar, then this video is going to feel uncomfortably personal, because the psychology of people who overthink is far deeper than most people realize. Overthinking is not simply thinking too much. It is a mind that has learned to treat uncertainty like a threat. And once you understand what is actually happening inside the brain of an overthinker, you begin to realize something important. Most overthinkers are not weak, dramatic, or broken. They are people whose minds are working overtime, trying to protect them from pain, rejection, embarrassment, failure, and regret. Let's start with what overthinking actually is at a psychological level, because most people misunderstand it. They think overthinkers just worry too much or cannot relax. But psychology describes overthinking as repetitive cognitive processing, the brain repeatedly trying to solve, predict, control, or prevent emotional discomfort. In simple words, the mind keeps thinking because it believes thinking will create safety. If I analyze this enough, maybe I can avoid failure, maybe I can avoid embarrassment, maybe I can avoid getting hurt. And that is why overthinking often feels impossible to switch off, because to the brain, it does not feel dangerous. It feels protective. Now here's where it gets interesting. People who overthink often fall into a few deep psychological patterns. The first is what psychologists call a high sensitivity to uncertainty. Some people are naturally more uncomfortable with not knowing what will happen next. Uncertainty creates anxiety inside them, so their brain starts scanning for answers, predicting outcomes, imagining scenarios, trying to mentally prepare for every possibility. But the problem is, the brain never finds complete certainty, so the thinking continues endlessly, one thought leading to another, then another, until even a small situation starts to feel emotionally overwhelming. The second pattern is rooted in fear of judgment and rejection. Many overthinkers are deeply aware of how they are perceived by others. They replay conversations wondering if they sounded stupid, awkward, annoying, or too emotional. They notice tiny details that most people forget within seconds, because somewhere deep inside, they are trying to protect themselves from social pain. The mind believes that if it can analyze every interaction perfectly, it can prevent rejection, but instead it creates constant mental exhaustion, because no human interaction can ever be controlled that precisely. The third pattern is emotional suppression, and this is something most people never notice. Many overthinkers are not actually processing emotions, they are thinking around emotions. Instead of feeling sadness, they analyze it. Instead of feeling fear, they intellectualize it. Instead of sitting with pain, they mentally dissect it, because thinking feels safer than feeling. Emotions are unpredictable, but thoughts create the illusion of control. So the mind keeps spinning, hoping logic can solve what is actually emotional discomfort. Now there is another layer to this, and it is the role of the brain's threat detection system. Studies in neuroscience show that overthinking activates areas of the brain associated with fear and self-protection, especially when someone is anxious or emotionally stressed. The brain starts treating ordinary situations like potential threats. A delayed reply becomes a sign of rejection. A mistake becomes a disaster. An uncertain future becomes a danger, and once the brain enters this state, it becomes extremely difficult to relax, because the nervous system believes it must stay alert at all times. And here's something people rarely understand about overthinkers. Most of them are not trying to be negative. In fact, many of them care deeply. They think so much because things matter deeply to them, relationships matter deeply, decisions matter deeply, the future matters deeply. They are often highly self-aware, emotionally sensitive, and deeply reflective people. But without emotional balance, that same awareness can turn inward and become self-destruction, because the mind was never designed to carry every possibility all at once. Overthinking also creates a dangerous illusion, the illusion of productivity, because when someone is constantly thinking, it feels like they are doing something useful. But many times, overthinking is not problem solving. It is mental looping, going through the same thoughts without reaching peace or action, and slowly this can create paralysis. People stop making decisions, stop taking risks, stop trusting themselves, because they are waiting for absolute certainty before they move forward. And absolute certainty never comes. None of this means overthinking is permanent, and that is important to understand, because the goal is not to stop thinking completely. The goal is to stop treating every thought like an emergency. Healthy minds do not have fewer thoughts. They simply have a healthier relationship with uncertainty, emotions, and imperfection. They understand that not everything can be controlled, explained, predicted, or solved immediately. Sometimes peace comes not from finding every answer, but from learning that you can survive without them. And here's the part that really changes how you see overthinking. In a world obsessed with productivity, perfection, and constant comparison, many people have trained themselves to believe they must always stay mentally ahead, always prepared, always aware. But life was never meant to be lived entirely inside your head. Because while overthinkers are busy analyzing every possible future, they often miss the present moment completely. They miss conversations, experiences, opportunities, and peace. Not because they do not care about life, but because they care so much that their mind never lets them fully arrive inside it. The psychology of people who overthink is not about weakness. It is about protection, a mind trying too hard to prevent pain, disappointment, failure, or regret. But eventually, every overthinker reaches a moment where they realize something powerful. The thoughts never fully stop, the uncertainty never fully disappears, and life still keeps moving anyway. And maybe healing begins the moment you stop asking your mind to predict everything before you allow yourself to live, because some of the best moments in life happen not when you finally control every outcome, but when you finally let yourself breathe without needing to. And if this video made you feel understood in a way you could not explain before, share it with someone whose mind is always racing, someone who carries too much silently, because sometimes the people who think the most are also the people who need peace the most. And maybe this reminder is exactly what they needed today.